Oh, Schaff, you've really done it now, you rabid cur. You can't call this movie a cinematic disaster. Have you even seen a bad movie before? This is hyperbole of the highest order. This movie is great because Rotten Tomatoes and the Academy said so. And you gave it a 6 out of 10 over a year ago, so you can never take that back. That's your official opinion. Forever. Your video is awful based on the title alone, and I'm letting you know that before I even watch it. Unsubscribbled. Okay, now that that's out of the way. Funding for Schaffrillas is provided by Squarespace, the sponsor of today's video. From websites and online stores to marketing tools and analytics, Squarespace is the all-in-one platform to build a beautiful online presence and run your business. More info at the end of the video. Ralph Breaks the Internet is a movie people can like if they enjoy it. I can see what people like about it. People can feel any way they want to about it. Opinions are valid. With that said, I think this is an absolute train wreck embarrassment of a film. But before we get into that, let's talk about Disney. Not Disney, the animation studio who made those classic films you grew up loving. Disney, the giant multimedia conglomerate with a stranglehold on the entertainment industry. Given this company's reach, influence, and sheer volume of beloved IPs, I think it's safe to make the following statement. Disney doesn't need to try anymore. Not saying that they've stopped trying, they've released some incredible works of art throughout the 2010s with a ton of effort put into them. But all I'm saying is, they don't need to put effort in anymore in order to succeed. The Walt Disney Company is too big to fail. They can release uninspired remake after uninspired remake, mediocre sequel after mediocre sequel, and it doesn't matter. People will eat it up because their emotional connection to the Walt Disney brand is too strong. Remember in my Megamind video when I said Illumination stopped trying after the first Despicable Me because they realized they would make money either way? Well, that's the threshold Disney finds themselves on now, but to an even larger degree. Unless audiences get real sick of unoriginality real soon, there is no longer a need to experiment or come up with inventive, brilliant ideas in order to succeed as a company. And this past decade has been the culmination of that fact. Star Wars is loaded with nostalgia bait and its attempts to be original have mostly backfired. Pixar has been churning out sequel after sequel that, more often than not, lack the imagination and ingenuity that made the originals such a success. And of course, the live-action remakes that suck all the personality out of the original film and replace them with pandering, hollow, pseudo-wokeness.
Teaching another girl to read isn't one enough.
You know, Amy, anytime someone calls attention to the breaking of gender rules, it ultimately undermines the concept of gender equality by implying that this is an exception and not the status quo.
What does he mean by that?
It's not all bad news though. The MCU has been pretty good overall. Every once in a while, Pixar remembers how to make something really exceptional. And honestly, the most consistent voice throughout this decade of unoriginality and fan service and pandering has been, who else? Walt Disney Animation Studios. After an abysmal decade during the 2000s, they've kind of taken Pixar's crown as the premier animation studio of the 2010s. Pixar has made more money, but Disney Animation has left more of an impact, I feel. Their movies throughout the 2010s have mostly all had heart, creativity, wit, energy, and above all, effort put in. Even the movies I don't like as much, like the Frozen films and Big Hero 6, aren't lazy in the slightest. They're well put together and have a ton of artistic merit. Some artistic merit. And on the opposite end, movies like Moana and Tangled have become some of my all-time favorites. These movies are not perfect, but they're all refreshingly original and special in their own ways. I always thought of this decade as a new Disney renaissance of sorts. But it didn't last, because fresh off the heels of one of their greatest movies ever, Moana, Disney released one of the shittiest movies in their entire catalog, and that's kinda saying a lot. Ralph Breaks the Internet is emblematic of every problem modern Disney has. It's uninspired, it's pandering, it's a sequel to a movie that didn't warrant a continuation. It even has a dash of mishandled pseudo-wokeness. Oh, by gosh, by golly, you did it, Disney. You made the perfect storm of awfulness. Granted, there are at least 3 Pixar movies this decade that are worse, but Ralph Breaks the Internet, more than any of these movies, screams, we don't have to try anymore. We have our brands, we have those characters you liked in the first movie, we have an actual good message buried underneath the abysmal ham-fisted execution. We'll take that Oscar now, thank you very much. We earned it for sure. Oy vey. This is gonna be a tough one to get through. But I guess I should start by being nice to the movie since it's not the worst thing ever. Hell, it's only the 4th worst animated movie released under the Disney umbrella this decade. Oh, wait, sorry. The 5th worst animated movie. So let's get into the stuff I actually really like. Don't worry, there's not much. I think the most obvious thing that is not terrible about this movie would be the Disney princess stuff. Their first scene doesn't feel like awful product placement like the stuff right before it. It feels like a genuinely funny, kinda important plot development. Since Vanellope subverted the typical princess role at the end of the first movie, seeing them take that meta commentary one step further in the sequel is actually a smart idea. She teaches them the power of comfy clothing with legit clever references on them, and in turn, they teach her the power of following your dream heart song and whatnot. It's really funny to see an unconventional princess like Vanellope try and come up with an I want song of her own and miserably fail. At first. But yeah, I love the princess stuff in this. I like how well the 2D designs translate into 3D. I like that 3PO is their butler because that just kind of fits right in perfectly. I like Ariel's passionate ballad about shirts. I like that Elsa isn't given more screen time than the others. I like how this movie hates Merida as much as I do. And that payoff at the end with all the princesses using their abilities to save Ralph is so damn good. It's super creative. Hearing instrumental versions of each princess's theme is an excellent touch. And it was neat to see a semi-obscure character like Prince Naveen in frog form. That subverted my expectations. Speaking of which, Vanellope's song honestly gives me so much joy. It works really well as a subversion of the classic Disney I want power ballad formula, and it's a pretty good song once you separate it from how terribly written her motivations are. Reminds me of another song. A place called Slaughter Race is filled with so much imagination and whimsy, to the point where I genuinely wonder if the people who worked on it are the same people who made the rest of this pile of garbage. Okay, sorry, positives. I'm sure there's more positives. The Ralph monster is really well animated and absolutely abominable. Great work, animation team. The 2 post-credit scenes are legendary. I can't believe Disney actually animated a Rickroll. Like, it's an older meme, but it checks out. Rickrolling is legendary in the vast history of the internet, and it's not really an example of Disney's executives being behind the times. It's a legit good tribute. Ralph as Bob Ross was inspired, and this is what I was referring to in my first review. The one viral video Ralph made that was good. It was this one. How did you guys not, am I just old and you youngins had no idea who Ralph was supposed to be here? Well, like, please explain. I guess Spamly is an okay character. I don't know. The part where he tries to catch Ralph was the only time I laughed outside of the princess stuff in the song. It was cute when Ralph and Vanellope didn't understand how auctions worked. I liked how Nosemore's eyes are done with 2D animation. I don't know. I'm really trying here, guys. Oh, wait, this line is great.
The internet is not nearly as impressive as how Sonic described it.
I like when Ralph commits homicide on this lady's internet connection. And yeah, that's about it. This movie isn't quite the same slog as Brave or The Good Dinosaur, but in a lot of ways, it's more insulting than either of those movies, since it takes likable, pre-established characters and really mangles both of them in such a disappointing fashion. So while this film has good elements, and while I'd sooner sit through it than Pixar's Unholy Trilogy, I hate it much more than those films simply on account of what it represents. This film, much like the title implies, is broken. From its premise to its characters to its messages. And hey, let's talk about that middle thing, shall we? So I like the first Wreck-It Ralph movie quite a bit. Maybe not as much as I did when I was younger, and certainly not as much as the animated musicals, but I still think it's a really strong film. And before any of you smart Alex trying to accuse me of having a musical bias, I'll have you know that Lilo and Stitch is a cinematic masterpiece and one of my favorite Disney movies, and that's not even a musical, so there. Got him. Anyway, yeah, Wreck-It Ralph is really good, like I said.
Thanks, Satan.
I think it has an incredibly captivating setting and a really strong premise. It has a lot of great video game references, from the in-your-face to the subtle ones. King Candy is a legit fantastic villain. Ralph and Vanellope's bond is really strong, and their inevitable big fight scene is actually very well implemented into the story, and legitimately pretty heartbreaking. And they didn't have to destroy the characters' personalities in order to make it happen. And yeah, I don't know, man, that climax and ending both really give me the feels. What can I say? It's a nice, charming story with a happy ending. Or so we thought. Turns out Vanellope wants more out of life, because after 6 years of living out her dream of being a sugar rush racer, it's gotten kinda old, and she wants something new and exciting. But Ralph just wants everything to stay the same, perfectly content with the life he has now. That's actually not a bad setup for a conflict. Unfortunately, these two are assholes who don't realize that their actions have consequences! Vanellope's job is to be a racer. Ralph's job is to wreck the building. But in the middle of the day, when the arcade is open, Ralph figures it's a great time to build Vanellope a new track, which she drives towards against the wishes of her player. This really couldn't have waited until nighttime? Can't Vanellope just go do her job in the daytime and then drive on Ralph's cool new course at night? This sounds like a minor point, but it's not, since this is what causes the wheel to break, the game to get unplugged, and the thousands of candy people to become homeless. All because these two acted alarmingly selfishly and didn't consider the consequences of their actions. I kinda thought after the first movie, when Ralph's game ran the risk of getting unplugged once he went turbo, that he would have learned a lesson about not doing this sort of shit. And don't worry, we'll get back to turbo later. But yeah, Ralph the movie maker abandons his game for the day and meddles in Vanellope's game as it's being played, cause he just can't make it through the day without his best buddy Vanellope feeling down. This can't wait till later. Oh no. Why? Because Ralph is insecure. He's paranoid about the idea that he and Vanellope are arguing over something, and he needs to resolve this non-argument right now. And this is honestly the biggest problem with the film. It treats Ralph like a blithering man baby when that really wasn't who he was at all in the first film. He was more of an everyman, a down-on-his-luck guy who was tired of nobody appreciating him. His relationship to Vanellope gave off more of a father-daughter or lame uncle vibe, where there's definitely a strong connection there, but it's more of a mentorship sort of thing. I know video game characters don't age, but Ralph is programmed as this older dude, and Vanellope is programmed as like a 10-year-old girl. It would be really weird if Ralph was this ultra clingy best friend who acts defensive and angry whenever this 10-year-old girl wants to hang out with someone else. Oh wait! Ralph and Vanellope's relationship in this movie is just so weird. As an adult, you kind of bring yourself down a few levels to interact with kids, which is what I assumed was happening in the first movie. But I guess Ralph really just has the mental capacity of a 5-year-old while Vanellope is discovering her passions like someone in their early 20s would. It's a weird juxtaposition. If Ralph acted like more of an overprotective father and less of a creepy, needy, obsessive best friend, that would have worked a lot better. But this is preposterous. Anyway, back to Ralph being an asshole. He never apologizes for getting Sugar Rush unplugged, rendering thousands of people homeless. And then he acts like this is some amazing thing for Vanellope. Now they can just hang out all the time and do nothing, which is exactly what she wants. Except not. If Ralph had just employed basic listening skills, he could be trying to console her for losing her home, but instead his head is so far up his own ass that he expresses how excited he is that Vanellope can now live out his ideal life of doing nothing all day. Now, isn't the whole point of the movie Ralph learning that this way of thinking is wrong, you may ask? Yeah, but I feel like Ralph in the first movie wasn't this emotionally dim or selfish. I don't think this is a lesson he needed to learn. Or if he did need to, he shouldn't have acted this insecure about it. But at every turn, he expresses how much he doesn't trust Vanellope's cool new friend Shank, or how sad he's gonna be to spend a couple hours apart from his best friend, who he hasn't been separated from in 6 years. Except every single day when they go to work in their own separate games, but God forbid she carries a pop-up ad around by herself for 2 hours. All of it just lacks subtlety, and I think the giant Ralph monster is a tremendous example of how unsubtle and creepy the message is when you apply it to these characters. Sorry that I don't like the image of a grown man slobbering over his friendship with a little girl. Wish I could tell you that I don't find that weird, cause I do. I buy the connections between characters in Toy Story because they do it with toys that physically look to be the same age. But this is uncomfortable and super on the nose. Like there's this really awkward line where Ralph basically just states the message of the movie without allowing kids to pick it up themselves.
Wow. From up here, I can see how I do come across as needy and clingy and self-destructive, like Knowsmore said.
I think the fact that the movie ends with Ralph and Vanellope apart is enough to let kids get the message, guys. Subtlety is a blessing. When I was a kid and I watched Ratatouille, I didn't need these chefs to say, "Wow, I don't like the idea of working for an idiot controlled by a rat. That's weird. I quit." I understood what their motivations were without them saying anything. Kids are smarter than you think, as opposed to Ralph, who is dumber than I thought. Because when he sees Vanellope wanting to stay in Slaughter Race, he's so emotionally unintelligent that he just assumes that she's brainwashed. Yeah, That makes sense. After all, her desire to race in a more exciting environment just sprang up out of the blue. She never mentioned this before. Like, seriously, dude, how dense are you? You've known her for 6 years, and you don't understand that this is what she's always wanted? So Ralph, in a final act of character assassination, decides to unleash a deadly virus in the slaughter race to make it so boring that Vanellope will want to leave. Now, given Ralph's experience with viruses, you'd think that this would not be something he would want to be doing to this game his best friend is in. What the hell do you know? Of course Ralph would do that. Just trust us. This movie won an Oscar before the Oscars even happened. F you.
Arthur will find some defect in the code and spread it all over the game till everything becomes quote-unquote boring.
Like, really? You're telling me he's that much of a brain-dead moron that he goes through with this plan after hearing that?
Are you stupid? Because the only way anyone gets hurt is if you are stupid.
So yeah, something goes wrong and Vanellope's gonna die. And I love how there's 60 seconds to save her, but Ralph wastes time explaining to the audience, I mean Spamly, that she'll die if he doesn't get her out. Like, you can tell Spamly that after you go save her. You don't exactly have time to waste. And then 10 seconds later, Shank literally says the exact same thing. So there literally was no reason to have Ralph say this to the audience. Just one of the many insecurities present in the script. But when you got too many insecurities, they just build and build until your movie becomes this giant, horrifying, stitched together abomination that lays waste to everything in its path. And that's no good. Also, many have mentioned this, but I love how the movie just forgets about the virus. It's still loose on the internet, right? They only got rid of the Ralph clones, but the screenwriter, I mean, Ralph and Vanellope just kind of forgot about this little bugger. Whoops. Oh well, at least with how bad Ralph is, there's no way Vanellope can possibly be worse, right?
No!
Right?
Wrong!
Right, actually. Like, yeah, she's not as bad, but she's still not good. In Vanellope's case, a lot of people seem to take issue with the fact that her story arc entirely contradicts the previous film. She's going turbo, jumping from game to game with no thought of the consequences. The first film constantly tells its characters that they can't go turbo, and that game jumping is the worst thing you can possibly do.
Ralph's gone turbo?
But Vanellope does it in this movie. What in tarnation? That's bad writing. And to that I say, yes. Yes, it is. But not exactly for the reasons most people think. Did you know that people change over time? They get different goals. They have different dreams. They think they know what they want, but what they wanted gets old to them and they want to find their passion somewhere else. There's nothing wrong with the concept of Vanellope wanting to find a different game to call home. But the problem here is the rules. The first movie drills the idea into your head that going turbo is bad. But not necessarily. Ralph went turbo and it led to a string of events that saved Vanellope from a life of isolation and depression, all the while destroying the original Turbo once and for all. It was bad for Ralph's game since it appeared to be broken without him there, but that's because he's a crucial character for the game to work. Vanellope says herself that she's one of 16 racers, though it's weird that she says no one would miss her when she clearly makes the game more popular. Still, Sugar Rush functioned for years without her on the roster. It could feasibly function without her. Whenever I go to the arcade with my friends, I'd probably still play Mario Kart even if Waluigi suddenly vanished from the roster one day. It would sting and be really disappointing, and I might cry about it that night before booting up Smash Bros to cheer myself up before being hit with a doubly crushing revelation, but hey, I'd still play the games. If Vanellope wants to follow her passions, good for her. But considering the fact that she's basically doing what the villain did in the last movie, and they don't even mention him once, that's kind of jarring. Like, Ralph could tell her there's no way she should go turbo under any circumstances, and Vanellope, the person most hurt by Turbo's actions, could try and convince him that there's some good to be had from game jumping. An old set-in-stone perspective gets challenged by the new generation. But that would require these people to have rewatched the first movie, which they clearly didn't do. So Turbo goes completely unmentioned. Oh, but Frozen 2 can mention Hans just fine. It's so weird that a sequel so thematically tied to the last movie's villain pretends he doesn't exist, while Hans gets 15 references in Frozen 2 despite being completely irrelevant to its story and themes. What's up with that? What's up with that? Anyway, Vanellope though. While I don't think she's as poorly written as Ralph, I do think the script portrays her as just a bit too selfish. Like, she could take time to consider the implications of leaving her game for good. And all the other racers who apparently hate her again? I thought everyone liked her at the end of the first movie. Did the racers also forget to rewatch the first movie? But Vanellope doesn't really consider the idea that there's a chance the game won't be popular enough without her around, and that the game could get unplugged, leaving all the sugar rushers homeless once again. Like I said, I don't think that would be the case, but it's a possibility Vanellope should really consider. But she doesn't. She already went against the will of her player and broke her game, also not really caring about the consequences. Why should she start caring now? And while I think her big emotional blow up with Ralph is completely justified after what he did, I still think she got off too easy in regards to the more selfish aspects of her story arc. She's never called out, and she never comes to the realization that her actions might have hurt Ralph's feelings or her own game. Between the two of them, Ralph is clearly more wrong, but the movie insists that Vanellope isn't wrong at all. And that's just not true. In the end, while I like Vanellope leaving to pursue her dreams and the message the movie is going for, it kind of ignores the fact that friendship is a two-way street. Both Ralph and Vanellope had room to grow as friends, but the movie only seemed interested in pointing out Ralph's negative tendencies as a friend, which feels incredibly disingenuous. Okay, so the movie's not great at feels, but that's okay, because the comedy is really good, right? No, it is not. It is actually not. I was telling a fib. This movie opens up with a burp off and a conversation about Zangief waxing. No. I'll keep this part short and sweet. The movie is not funny. It's shockingly not funny. I had a couple chuckles here and there, and even a guffaw or two. But for the most part, this film just swings and misses over and over again. Internet comedy does not mix well with middle-aged dudes making a movie for kids. There's no humor to be found in the internet this movie portrays. It's just showing us how the Netscape works, and haha, Ralph thinks Google is where you get goggles. That's a riot! You slay me, Disney, you slay me. If the movie wanted to satirize internet video trends, it failed because all they really did was acknowledge that these trends exist. Shoving Ralph into various viral video trends is, quite frankly, embarrassing and unfunny, aside from Bob Ross. I like that one. But for the most part, it's just, haha, Ralph is a screaming goat, and now he's flossing. Also, I hate to get up on my soapbox, but I don't like how this movie portrays making dozens of viral videos in a day as something completely positive with no real repercussions outside of mean comments. Check it out, kids. Ralph got rich by making viral videos. You can too. That's a bad message. Not only is it unrealistic, but it's unhealthy. Burnout is such a huge concern for content creators, and the fact that this movie pretends like it doesn't exist really irritates me. Just make Ralph tired. Make him want to quit after making all these videos. Have him doubt his resolve to keep going, but he has to. It's for his best friend. But no, instead the movie decides that the comment section is the negative aspect it wants to focus on, which is hysterical. See, this is still relevant to the comedy section of the video because these comments are a joke. Ralph's video stink. Ralph is the worst. I hate him. Like, what kind of life do these people lead where they get off on trying to hurt a video game character's feelings? What are they, Smash fans? I can't believe the movie tries to play this as a serious, sad moment. This is like the emotional scene in Cars 2, where Mater realizes everyone thinks he's an idiot. Whoa, you're really yanking at my heartstrings there, guys. Slow down. Anyway, yeah, there's really not much critique of the internet to be found here, and Ralph and Vanellope really aren't that funny. But hey, they're just two of the four main characters from the original film. What about Felix and Calhoun? Remember them? They were pretty funny in the first movie and they got married. What wacky adventures are in store for them? None. Going into this movie, I didn't see them at all in the marketing, and I really wondered what role they would have, if any. Then they set up this great subplot where they adopt all the Sugar Rush racers. I was really looking forward to that as a counterbalance to all the internet stuff. Why do I even bother? This really funny sounding subplot happens entirely off screen. Like, God forbid we get rid of some of the corporate pandering scenes to spend time with two of the main characters from the last movie doing something new. Honestly, Felix was probably my favorite character from the first movie besides King Candy, so this just sucks. Bro, I'm straight up not having a good time. I guess Felix was too busy covering for Ralph like he said he would. Hey, wait a minute. How is he doing that? The arcade is open. Ralph is not at his post. Last time this happened, everything went wrong. Does the movie care to follow its own rules, or are we just cool with hinging this entire premise on a throwaway line? Also, Ralph and Felix say e-boy way too much, which, like, I think that term became widely used after this movie came out, but still.
Huh, an actual e-boy.
Remember when the creative team knew what they were doing? I remember. It's abundantly clear that the creative team did their homework on gaming culture with the first movie. And while it wraps up its story very nicely, it does kind of leave you with a lasting impact in seeing Ralph and his buddies explore new gaming worlds. We only really saw this one arcade, but what about console games? Visual novels? Life simulators? RPGs? Fantasy action games? What if Ralph went into Minecraft and Vanellope started building a really terrible house, which was just like the worst thing ever, and the snooty gated community made fun of it, so Ralph decided to wreck their homes, and then he gets chased by the Minecraft police. I mean, I'm assuming this is what happens in the game. I don't play Minecraft. But my point is, the possibilities are so endless when expanding the world of Wreck-It Ralph. There's so many new frontiers to take video game characters, to the point where even though I was satisfied with how the first movie's story ended, I was actually excited by the prospect of a sequel. Here's some stuff I found from Wikipedia about the early ideas director Rich Moore had for a second installment. Pause and read it if you want. And yes, Professor, I checked all the links they cited and all of the information is accurate. Stop shaming me for using Wikipedia. It's a perfectly reputable source of information, and the academic community should legalize it. I hear some academic tournaments actually allow Wikipedia as a counterpick source, and I think that's some great progress. See? Look at that, Sperry the Platypus. I know my gaming tournament terminology. Except that I don't. I didn't know what counterpick meant until I looked it up on Wikipedia for this video. This is what I'm telling you. Wikipedia has so much knowledge to give. Use its knowledge. I beg you. Okay, that might have been my worst tangent ever. Like, I don't even see how that was related at all to what I was talking about. I mean, I guess it was tangentially related. Like, I needed to get that information from Wikipedia in order to inform you guys about the movie, but that didn't really further my quest to explain why this movie is complete poodoo. Ooh, you know what would really prove my point? Let's go to Letterboxd and see what the reviews say. Letterboxd is always reputable, except when it's not, and this movie has a, what? 3.3? Alright, I didn't want to do this again, but looks like I have to film another song parody in order to get this Letterboxd score down to the 1.5 to 1.9 range it desperately deserves. I think I'm gonna start a new account for that though. No need to use this one. I mean, I'm a moderately well-known guy people remember. If I start from scratch on a new account, my song is sure to go viral and make me hundreds of dollars in the span of 1 hour. In less than 24 hours, I'll have enough money to buy Letterboxd, delete all the reviews that disagree with my point of view, maybe pay off some people and make sure they keep their scores low, and voila! Everyone will agree with me and I'll finally be happy. And hey, some people on Letterboxd already get it. IHE calls the movie astonishingly bad. I couldn't have said it better myself. Stevie's synopsis of the film is as follows. Ralph makes an ASMR video and gets cyberbullied. Yep, no, you nailed it. That's absolutely right. A positive one. All right, I'll give it a shot. Okay, that's fair. But what does Paul O'Connor have to say?
This movie is really, really bad. I find it hypocritical that people bashed the Emoji Movie for being an ad but don't bash this movie at all. The plot is not good. The story is very weak, yada 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 other words. Ralph Breaks the Internet is barely a step up from the Emoji Movie.
Shit, man. That's the most accurate review I've ever seen in my thoughts and feelings on this feature film. I truly don't understand why the world of this movie is given a pass when it's just a blatant assortment of never-ending product placement. I don't mind the characters having to use the internet to travel between online games, which should have been the focus of the movie, but there's a lot of time spent in this clean, sterile, visually unappealing internet, populated with endless real-life brands, and it just comes across as gross. The first movie was mostly spent in Sugar Rush, which is such a visually appealing, deliciously animated world. But this movie primarily takes place in this boring, bluish wasteland.
Wasteland? I think you mean Wonderland.
Shut up, John Ratzenberger. Go back to Star Wars. Fun fact, John Ratzenberger actually appeared in The Empire Strikes Back as the guy who tells Leia the shield doors must be closed. It's interesting because many creatives who frequently work for Disney, like Jon Favreau and Taika Waititi, make little cameos in Disney Star Wars projects. But John Ratzenberger, who's had a voice role in every Pixar movie, got his Star Wars cameo in 1980, way before Disney purchased the brand and before Pixar even existed. That's kind of bonkers, and I'd like to thank Wikipedia for giving me this information. I will be reminding you of Wikipedia many times throughout this review. Is gonna pop up again, don't you worry. Well, let's see what I did in this segment so far. I think it was about 10% substance and 90% dicking around various websites for tangentially related reasons. And I, for one, am proud of that. As a matter of fact, I fully expect this video to win the Academy Award for Best Video Essay, which will be implemented at my request once my ambitious plans to purchase every website known to man go through. I'll be a shoo-in. The quality of my analysis? Pfft, that doesn't matter. I have more than 10 subscribers. My channel's too big to fail. Why do I need to try anymore? Why even bother? Let's bring it all back to the crown jewel of this movie, the Oh My Disney sequence. People like to leverage a certain complaint against movies with product placement in them. It's just a commercial. This Playmobil movie is just a Playmobil commercial. Emmanuel movie is just an Amunjo commercial. Al Pacino, what are you doing? No! You were the chosen one! I'm sorry, Albert. I didn't want to do this, but we gotta put you down, buddy. When I talk about a sponsor, I do so with the knowledge that A, I've made it clear that this is sponsored content, and B, my audience consists of teens and adults who understand the concept of sponsored content. Children don't realize that the movie they're watching subliminally wants them to go to ohmydisney.com and take the What Disney Princess Are You quiz themselves, which before you ask, I got Jasmine. I want to live on the moon! They don't realize that they're being primed to listen to the pop cover of Let It Go over and over. They don't realize that the movie wants them to ask their parents to see Star Wars or Guardians of the Galaxy or Toy Story right after. I'm sorry, what the hell? How do you f up Buzz Lightyear's design that badly? Just borrow the model from Pixar. It's not hard. I understand that this is just a 3-minute scene and it's pretty unimportant in the grand scheme of the movie, but hey, it dominated the marketing now, didn't it? It's clearly the takeaway Disney wanted to leave you with, and it's genuinely so jarring that it takes me out of the film entirely. The magic of watching a new Disney movie is sucked out completely because the film bombards you with brands instead of artistry. Disney has really gotten on this huge nostalgia kick as of late, because the more it reminds you of its previous works, the more people will buy or get a Disney Plus subscription. That works for them too. The live action remakes in Star Wars movies are the most obvious examples of nostalgia bait, but then you got Endgame. We kind of ignored this aspect of the movie since we all liked it and it fit the story really well, but damn, don't you want to rewatch that first Avengers movie again? Don't you want to put on that fun as hell Guardians of the Galaxy movie? Don't you want to give Thor the Dark World another chance? Oh please, oh god, give it another chance. And then there's Frozen 2. In my review, I complained about the movie's bizarre need to reference the first film over and over, but wow, that was intentional, wasn't it? All this talk of Hans and these snow sculptures depicting the events of the first movie. If you're a little kid, how can you not want your parents to put on the first movie as soon as you get home? And Toy Story 4 didn't actually fall into this trap, to be honest. I'm very impressed. But Ralph Breaks My Fucking Patience did. This whole scene is a trap. To quote the late Fleet Admiral Gail Akbar, children can't repel advertisements of that magnitude. That might have been a paraphrase, I'm not sure. If you wanted to satirize the Disney brand, then fine, but that's not at all what this is. We get that from the princess scene a little bit, and that's all fine and good. But what does this Ready Player One jumble of nostalgia really accomplish in the grand scheme of the film? Nothing. There's nothing funny, charming, satirical, or interesting here. It really is just a trail mix bag of assorted Disney properties. I mean, look at this obsessive fan interrogating baby Groot. He could have asked something really funny, but instead he asked if Groot is a descendant of a tree Red Skull mentioned one time that literally no one has ever thought about. And he asks it so aggressively, like they had the pieces for a really funny interaction, but they needed a more ridiculous, obsessive question from this guy. The joke is really half-baked. Also, wow, baby Groot. Remember when he was relevant wasn't for one movie 3 years ago, I'm sure if this movie came out today, they totally still would have used Baby Groot and not any other baby from a subsidiary owned by Disney. None whatsoever. God, everything about this movie is just so dated. It's less than 2 years old and it already feels dated. I don't understand how you manage that. For a movie so obsessed with trends and trying to stay relevant in the digital age, it really doesn't hold up. And like, imagine watching this in 10 years. Imagine seeing the references to Fortnite, Chewbacca Dad, Screaming Goats, all that pandering bullshit and thinking, is this what our culture was like? And the first Ralph movie simply wasn't like this. 8 years later, it doesn't feel like it's aged at all. It's a simple love letter to arcade gaming, and it has some incredibly endearing characters in a charming story and fun world. Nothing about this movie's world is fun or charming. Were there any memorable locations you would love to visit? Were there any non-musical sequences that sparked your imagination or filled you with a sense of wonder and amazement? If Sora, Donald, and Goofy were told that instead of crossing the ocean with Moana and Maui, or helping Nick and Judy solve a case, they had to enter the internet and visit a Disney fan page in order to raise enough money for a steering wheel, would that really be a world you'd be excited to play? Maybe you would. I don't know. I don't care, frankly. All I know is that for me, this movie killed the magic of Disney. It distilled the very essence of the brand into safe corporate schlock that only barely recaptures the heart and soul of the original in short one-off sequences. It's a movie with good intentions buried underneath all the cynicism and laziness, but it fails to properly develop its message due to its insistence on dumbing down its characters to an asinine degree. It exists as a brand extension first and a film second, not once ever justifying its existence as a follow-up to Wreck-It Ralph or a piece of the Walt Disney Animation Studios catalog. At best, it's an impressively animated direct-to-DVD sequel, but even that's kind of an insult to some of the better direct-to-DVD sequels. It's really just a slightly less cynical version of Ready Player One or the Emoji Movie, but it doesn't get nearly as much flack for some reason. Maybe people are just too attached to these characters to realize how bastardized they are in this film. Or maybe they just like getting Disney references shoveled into their face with no rhyme or reason. Who knows? Who cares? I'm just done. I'm done getting my hopes up that any Disney film will be exceptional or even just good at the bare minimum. Ralph Breaks the Internet broke me. The future of animation is in the hands of Netflix, Laika, maybe even Sony. Look to the innovators of the medium and get stoked for the passionate projects they're putting out. And if Disney or Pixar can still squeeze out a great film, I'll be happy. Good for them. But greatness is starting to become the exception, not the rule. But you know what? I'm gonna make the most out of this bad movie situation. Maybe if I make an amazing, phenomenal, professional looking website, Ralph and Vanellope will go to it in Wreck-It Ralph 3. Wouldn't that be radical? And the best way to make an incredible website that fictional video game characters would enjoy visiting is through Squarespace. It's a fantastic, intuitive, online website builder that allows you to create beautiful websites for your business or personal hobby. Present your work using Squarespace's professional portfolio designs. Display projects in customizable galleries and add password-protected pages to share private works with clients. You can even present your videos from YouTube, Vimeo, and Animoto on your Squarespace site. Add an image overlay to your video to improve your website's load speed by waiting to embed video players until playback starts. Pulling content from Twitter, Foursquare, Instagram, 500px, or Flickr directly into any page, sidebar, or footer of your site. In addition to configuring third-party domains, customers can purchase domains directly from Squarespace. Over 200 TLDs are currently available for purchase, and each domain comes with a beautiful parking page and free WHIOS privacy. If you're ready to share your passions or promote your business with the rest of the world, head to squarespace.com for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Schaffrillas to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain.